Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and what you're listening to now is a performance of Troubled Water by Margaret Bonds, performed by my guest today, Beatrice Nicholas. Beatrice has a very, very interesting story to tell, and this is taken from her 2024 EP, Black and Classical. So I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with pianist Beatrice Nicholas.
Hi, Hilary.
Hello. Oh, what a pleasure to talk to you. I'm absolutely delighted.
Thank you. I'm quite honored to be on your podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So, I want to talk to you about your upcoming gig upstairs at Ronnie's and the music that you've produced, but also what's behind all of that. There's so much to unpick here.
great. Yes, so I'll be playing upstairs at Ronnie Scott's on the 17th of August, 6:20 p.m. We start, doors open from 5 p.m. And as you know, Ronnie Scott's have recently opened a classical series. I'm playing as part of their classical series, but I'm someone who's coming with classical jazz fusion. I really wanted to honor the legacy that Ronnie Scott's have, and I'm someone that yes, I'm trained to be a classical concert pianist, but I love jazz, and I thought I'd just fuse the two in my show.
Yeah, and you have a very interesting your style. I find piano playing really interesting because it's a physical thing, isn't it? That you know
Mhm.
you're hitting the keys, but actually the different ways that people hit those keys, just there's so much there.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I guess physically it's all to do with weight and touch, but the way you touch the keys can just give rise to so many different types of color and styles. One of the people who I love listening to is Hiromi because she just has so many different types of nuance in the way she plays and colors. And I was at Ronnie's last week. I was having a jam session with James Pearson, and
Oh,
he was yeah, he's wonderful. He's totally
yeah.
wonderful. And he was just saying to me, Beatrice, one thing that you can really bring to jazz from your classical training is color, more dynamic and more color. Like classical pianists are used to spending hours and hours trying to find, but jazz pianists may not. And he said you could bring that, and that could be something that's unique to you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about the difference is that when you're a classical pianist, you are taught very much, you play what is written. You might interpret it in terms of style, your speed, and that sort of thing, but you are playing what is written. Whereas I think jazz pianists focus on the improvisation,
Yeah.
and although they have their own way of touching those keys, I think you there's so much more that you can do, and it sounds like it's really exciting, and I'm desperately sad that I can't be there on the 17th.
Oh.
I would have loved to. I think it sounds like it's going to be an amazing, because it's an amazing venue upstairs. I think they have created something very special up there.
So beautiful. I mean, every time I go out there, I'm kind of like, who designed this? It's just, the material on the walls, even the bathroom is exquisitely done. Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and on the ceiling, they've used the fabric from around the thing on the sort of the soundproofing bars things that
mm,
are across, and they're just beautiful. It's like every time you look somewhere different, there's something nice to look at,
yeah.
and that's alongside always the amazing music.
Yes. Yes, they've really gone for excellence. The acoustic is brilliant. Now they've got classical and jazz going on, field
Yeah.
music. I mean, so much. This beautiful place to come and listen to music, to eat, great bars. I'm told that the restaurant upstairs has an entirely different kitchen to the restaurant downstairs. So whether you're upstairs or downstairs, you're getting a different experience in both
Yeah.
places.
Yes, and I think sometimes, dare I say it, sometimes the audience is people who have come to Ronnie Scott's to come to Ronnie Scott's
Yeah.
because it's a tourist attraction. It's a very well-known jazz club around the world, and sometimes there's a little bit of, they've got no idea who they're listening to. Whereas every time I've been upstairs, it's very much everyone's really engaged. A lot of single people I've noticed upstairs, where there are people who've just come because they want to hear this particular
Yeah.
musician.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. No, it's definitely expanding their audience, which is
Exactly.
probably what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's been shown to work. It's been successful very quickly,
Yes.
I think.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the music. So at the start of this podcast, I'm playing um, some of Troubled Water
Oh, great.
because Margaret Bonds, who is not a pianist I'd ever heard of,
Mhm.
which is, I think, part of the reason you included her on the EP, is that she's not a very well-known composer, certainly in the UK. And also, I love Troubled Water because it's based on Wade in the Water, which is a spiritual, but also, we know it as it's been a rock. It's been performed by rock
Yeah.
musicians. So is that why you chose to include that on your EP and as part of your portfolio of tunes?
I was fascinated by the fusion that was going on um, in all the composers of that EP, but particularly Margaret Bond. So in Troubled Water, you've got the African American spiritual that's going on underneath it, but you've also got these jazz influences as well. And then in the middle section, it breaks out into something that's more like Rachmaninoff. And I find that not just her, but her teacher, who's also on the album, Florence Price, another composer, and actually a lot of African American composers in the 1940s and earlier would fuse Black heritage music together with classical music. And it's almost like a genre in itself.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the Gershwin obviously, and those sort of early pioneers of American music, where America really started getting its sound as a
Mhm.
precursor to the sort of 1950s, where all of a sudden jazz hit and bebop, and you get people like McCoy Tyner, Herbie Hancock, the modern real jazz pianists. But a lot of them had a lot had a classical training because you couldn't have a jazz training then.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. Totally right. Um, yeah, I mean, when I think about Leonard Bernstein, who's, big
Yeah,
classical composer and conductor, he said the common denominator in American music is jazz.
yeah,
I think for me, sometimes people who don't know me have said, "Are you American? Can you keep, going on about American music?" I'm like, "No, I'm British, but I'm just so attracted to the influence of jazz in across musical culture in America that I just want to spend time in it." Um, yeah, so
yeah.
I love fusion. So naturally, I've been very attracted to American music. There is just so much fusion in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point in the podcast, I would like to play Summer Interlude by Betty Jackson King. So let's do that. So these pieces by Betty Jackson King, they've definitely got some jazz influence, haven't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they have. For me, when I hear it, I hear jazz influence and I also hear gospel influence. I'm not entirely sure why. It's not overtly gospel harmonies being used, but there's this call and response. And I remember playing it actually to my sister for the first time, who is not a professional musician. She said it sounds like church. And she didn't mean like Anglican church. She kind of meant like black Pentecostal church. And she couldn't pinpoint why either. But the black heritage flowing through it it's so strong. The way I try to play it is to give a feeling of it being improvised. I've been really blessed because I managed to connect with her aunt, sorry, not her aunt, her niece, who's her only living relative that's around. And she connected me to people who are still alive who knew her. And they all talked about this huge capacity she had to improvise. She was a great improviser as well as a great Rachmaninoff player. So she probably stood between both traditions of classical and jazz, as most African American classical musicians in that time did. They could all improvise. They could all, play gospel and jazz to some extent. It was part of their natural, musical upbringing. Um, but what's interesting is when they cross over and bring it into classical as well.
Mm. Yeah, it's lovely. I often tell this story that when I started this podcast 6 years ago, I got myself all organized and I had a folder on my desktop for jazz downloads
Mhm.
and a folder for classical downloads. And within about 2 weeks, I was kind of like, this isn't going to work because there's too much where you kind of go, well, yeah, it is jazz, but there's a classical influence, and it is classical, but there's a jazz influence.
Yeah.
Which I love, I absolutely love. One of my first guests was Maria Schneider. And,
Yeah.
she's absolutely one of those people who wouldn't be the woman she is if she hadn't studied some classical music before
Mhm.
she studied the jazz.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the people who I'm bringing into the Ronnie Scott show is Lil Hardin Armstrong. So she was Louis Armstrong's second wife. She trained to be a concert pianist, but couldn't find work in that time. And one of the things she did was when she met Louis Armstrong, he wasn't famous at all. She encouraged him to step out as a soloist. She marketed him as a world-class solo player. And also she taught him classical music theory to underpin his solo playing and to give it more harmonic variety. Um, yeah, so she's a great example of someone, kind of going between both worlds and shaping it into something that works for her. That's something actually that was a main um, inspiration for this show. African American women who um, were between classical and jazz, or maybe African American women that we know as jazz stars, but actually started out wanting to be classical concert pianists, but couldn't be because of the racism in the time. Like we know Nina Simone, all she wanted to do was play Bach. I mean, in some ways, thank God she didn't.
Yeah.
Right? But that wasn't her plan. And she never got over the fact that she was rejected from Curtis Institute. She never got over it because she wanted to be this Bach player and she was an incredible Bach player. Um, but yeah, there's all these parts of history that not just shape music, but shape people's pathways. And we have a lot of jazz stars that were intending to be classical artists.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like that's going to be a wonderful show. Can you talk a little bit about your background? I mean,
Mm.
how did you become this amazing pianist that you are?
Thank you. So I'm one of five children. My parents wanted all five of us to study classical music in some way, as a hobby. But they were very strict about us practicing. So it was a hobby, but I had to practice for a certain amount of time, 6 days a week. So it was very disciplined. And the deal was that when we got to grade five, we were allowed to give up or pick a second instrument. And I picked a second instrument, the cello, and I think particularly when I got to secondary school, I just absolutely loved it. And it became something that became kind of my life, really. When I was 15, I went to the junior college, the Royal College of Music. Obviously, picked up big foundations for classical technique there. And from there, I just kind of went down the classical route. I went to the academy. I went to Berlin to study with some brilliant concert pianist. But when I was 13, my dad paid for me to have jazz and gospel lessons at home. I think the gentleman moved or something happened, so they didn't last a very long time. But that's when I actually had the opportunity to start learning how to improvise. I say learning, I probably was improvising already because I'm quite creative, and so actually improvising for most people, especially outside of Europe, is kind of how you approach music anyway. Um, but I kind of had some formal help with it at that point. He left, so those lessons stopped, but it's something that always kind of stayed inside of me. And as I started composing in my teenage years, very often I would score things that had a jazz influence or were just pure jazz. I think when I did my auditions for music college, I auditioned as a pianist and a composer for all the four main colleges in London and also Royal Northern in Manchester. And one of the compositions I submitted in my portfolio was a score for jazz big band. Um, and I remember the Royal Northern, they loved it. They were like, "Oh, we weren't expecting you to write jazz," and they loved it. So it kind of stayed in me. Um, but I've had a classical career, but now more and more I'm just wanting to fuse the two and to bring something more out of the bag.
Yeah. Yeah. Who are your so moving away from the sort of African American side, who are the British musicians? You've talked about James Pearson, but what other British musicians do you listen to? Are there other British pianists? Because I'm thinking I've got a couple in my mind, and I'm just wondering if you've got the same sort of ideas. Who would you listen to?
Yeah, I have to confess to listening to a lot of American pianists and overseas pianists. Now I think about it, I hadn't really clocked that before. Um, yeah, I am listening a lot to people like Robert Glasper
Oh,
and Tigran, and so I probably should invest more in listening to British pianists.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but Robert Glasper and Tigan, I mean, they're incredible, aren't they?
this is where I get my food from.
Yeah, Tiguan, I saw him at the Barbican
Hmm.
last year, and
Yeah,
he was playing with such enthusiasm. His hands were bleeding, and
really.
apparently he'd done something. He'd caught it on something. Before it wasn't that he caused it, but he started bleeding and just carried on playing because it was like
Wow.
I mean, he was just
Wow.
he just blew me away, completely blew me away.
Isn't it amazing, going back to what you said, to be that free
Yeah,
on stage that
yeah.
like your passion causes you to bleed? It's phenomenal.
Have you heard Bill Lawrence?
Not live.
Oh, right. Okay. That's my challenge for you is go
Okay.
and see Bill Lawrence performing live because he has got that jazz classical thing going on
Mm.
like absolutely brilliantly. And
Oh wow.
yeah, I interviewed him in his studio in South London, and when I saw him at the Cadogan Hall, and he'd got a grand piano and an upright piano, and they were at right angles to each other, and he was sort of playing. Sometimes he'd play one and then he'd play the other, and then he'd play one hand on the other one, and then he'd swap them over, and it was just because they had such different tones, and it's just amazing.
That's so brilliant. And it's so good to watch as well.
Oh,
That's so brilliant.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And his album last year, he released an album called Lumen, which is he just sat in a church, his local church, and had it all. He had a Yamaha piano brought in, and it was just in there, and it's just amazing. So,
Okay. That's
and
where I'll be.
yeah, and the reason I mentioned
Yeah.
that is because I think that so people would probably think of you as a classical pianist who maybe veers into jazz, and
Mm,
he's a jazz pianist who veers into classical. But I think you're the same.
that's
It's
super.
just yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, brilliant. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll take that
There
one.
you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It's I When I interviewed him, it was such a pleasure, like talking to you, where you just kind of you get it completely. I just. So what else is new? So you've got the gig at upstairs at Ronnie's on the 17th of August. What else is coming
Yes.
up?
Coming up, I still, have my kind of classical stuff. So I'm doing a Tchaikovsky concerto in September that I'm having to be very busy and disciplined about practicing for.
Yeah.
I can't kind of, I don't think I'm allowed to say what the event is yet, but it's going to be a really big one. But I can say that I'm going to have to spend quite a bit of time in the autumn, looking at Winfred Atwell. She's gonna be my
Oh.
next project. This is really cool because I was already wanting to record some of her music anyway, and just try and get back to some Black British women. Um, but then someone else just said we would like you to do such and such with Winfred Atwell. So, maybe the next time I see you, I'll be able to tell you what that is. But
Excellent. Oh, you've whetted my appetite for that now. That's really interesting. That's fantastic. Oh, brilliant.
and then composing. So I compose as well. I'm working with a fabulous player in Paris called Bella Bozic, who's a viola player. And my sister put me in touch with her because she plays in the Paris Philharmonie, but she also plays with Le Duc. So she as well is going in between classical and jazz. And she said to my sister, I just can't find pianists in Paris who will do both. It's either completely classical or completely jazz. And my sister said, "Oh, you can find people like that in the UK." And do you want to meet my sister? So I'm writing a jazz suite for her, viola suite for her. Done the first movement already. We've rehearsed that. It's gone really well. I've got to write a couple more movements. So yeah, I'll be writing that. And then the show that I'm doing for Ronnie's, which is both a mixture of jazz and classical and a fusion of jazz and classical. I've really, really enjoyed putting it together. So now I'm sketching ideas um, for a similar show that takes it further, where I can add. I mean, this show is for jazz trio, but I want to add, saxophone, trombone, um, synths, trumpet. I want to add more instrumentation, and just do something bigger and better.
Yeah. It sounds absolutely brilliant. So your gig at Ronnie's is with a jazz trio.
Yes,
Oh, so
yes.
who have you got on bass and drums?
So I've got Matt Home on drums, who is fantastic.
Yeah.
Best drum solos. Absolutely love his drum solos. And then Matthias Hoffaker on bass. They both play in a group called Five Way Split, who released an album earlier this year. I think the album is called Modus Operandi, which is also the
Okay.
title of their main track. Really lovely track, lovely album. So they're my jazz trio, and what we're doing is we're alternating each number. So it'll be jazz trio, then solo piano, jazz trio, solo piano, solo piano. Um, and the idea is to have high energy, and then that's jazz, and then completely switch to kind of very calm, tranquil classical, and then switch up immediately into high energy jazz. That was my idea, and going to be kind of highlighting that, with all sorts of stage tricks like lighting and all the things you can do at Ronnie's to make a show come alive.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing. And I am really, really sad that I can't be there. Oh, brilliant. Well, I hope it goes really, really well.
Thanks for being willing to talk about it and meet me. It's been great to meet you, Hilary. Really, really good.
Thank you for joining me for that episode of Harmonious World. What a pleasure it was to talk to Beatrice Nicholas. And there will be more coming. So, what you're listening to now is Clouds by Florence Price, who Beatrice mentioned. Although Clouds is classical in structure, it's created to sound like it's a free improvisation. So thank you for joining me once more for Harmonious World. And if you're one of my regular supporters, thank you so much because it really helps me keep going. If you're not, then think about becoming a supporter. You can sign up on my Patreon channel and just stay connected with me and find out what else is coming up, because I have some exciting news about live editions of Harmonious World, because there's more to come. So have a great week and thank you for joining me on Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.